Welcome to round number 2 of the Formula Racing League Late Night World Tour number 2, round 2 at Zandvoort in Holland. And we've got a treat for you tonight because look at how close those times are in practice as we come to the end of the practice, ready for the 15-minute qualifying session that will be coming our way. Now, a couple of things to run through from last week. We've got the winner from last week, Air Team Germany, in the pits and already at the front end, the sharp end of the grid, with Adam Sharp in second place, having taken pole previously. So you'll see drivers, but you'll also see countries. And this is because these drivers are not just racing for themselves. There is an overall championship on Sim Grid, which we'll run through a little bit later on. But there is a Nations League. So effectively, each driver racing for their country with the leading scorer for that country scoring points. We'll take you through those in just a quick second whilst we quickly load up those results. But it is a pleasure to bring this to you. So we're going to go from last week's winner in Austria, where Air held off so well the challenge of Mozambique driver Josh Clayton for almost the entire race, to be honest with you, once he took the lead from second place, having deposed the pole sitter Adam Sharp of England. Sharp spun at the first corner by Fernando Ferreira of Portugal, with that leading to a punishment for the Portuguese driver and a recovery drive to fifth for the English driver. So we're going to go through the Late Night World Tour, the Nations Championship, the country's championship, for you now, and this is as follows. So we've got Team Germany, who were represented by Marcel Basler and Air scoring the points last week. They're on 40 points, with Mozambique represented by Trevor Mendes today and Josh Clayton last week as well. They are second on 39 points. Team Scotland, represented by Andrew Tulloch, in third position in the Aston Martin, the purple Aston Martin there, going really, really well last time out, gambling on the weather and almost paying off, with Wales in fourth position on 37 points. Team England, Adam Sharp, representing Team England in fifth position, with Wales represented by Darren Mark Davies, the Coventry legend, the OG commentator, and Gareth Harvey in the Aston Martin. Put it on a pretty solid showing last time out. Another man to gamble on the weather, and it have almost paid off. Team New Zealand, represented by the honorary New Zealander Luke Prentice, and newcomer to the championship Jack Barnett, they are sixth position. They are on 35 points in the team's championship, with Team Italy represented by Gordon Brown. Not the most Italian sounding name, it must be said, but Brown wearing the colours with pride as we cut to him parking it nicely, I think it's fair to say, at the bottom of the circuit. Team Portugal, represented by Fernando Ferreira, in eighth place, on 33 points. Then Team Hungary, represented by Christian Keller, in ninth, ahead of Belgium, who were represented by David Faas from last week, ahead of Team Uganda, represented by Chris Gebman, the stalwart of Formula Racing League, just putting together a practice session now, with Canada represented by Michael Bush-Tully, another man beset by problems last week, having had a disastrous start due to a stop-go penalty, and Monaco, represented by Ritu Serra in the Honda, another man to have issues last time out. Paul Vidler joins us, the second driver for England, known for his speed as well, so England having a very strong pairing if they can get it right. So we're just waiting now for the last of the runners and riders to finish their practice session before we go on to an exciting qualifying session, traditional qualifying session, in that it is 15 minutes, I do believe, of 15 minutes of just non-stop action. So each driver can go out and set as many times as they want. It's kind of a 991. That is Fernando Ferreira coming into the pits, having gone second position, so watch out for him in the ensuing hour or so, as we have got a 10-minute qualifying session, not 15, as I said just a moment ago, but all drivers can get themselves as many laps as they want around this difficult, tight, twisty track. We're going into Tarzan Band. Now, this is the iteration of the track before Formula One got its hands on it. Obviously, Formula One departing Holland after next year to a great shame, in my opinion, but that's another matter for another day, which means that you're not going to get the banking that you would usually associate, in particular with turn number 4, as Erish fires himself to the back of the circuit. But it also means that there is no banking at the final corner, so it makes it a lot more of a technical challenge for the drivers as we will see. That also means that the drivers are going to have to work that bit harder to make their overtakes, because they're going to get no assistance from the circuit. It's going to have to be a bit of Dan Dare. It's going to have to be a very tight technical battle, with Eresh there just weaving his way through the second sector, trying to get as much heat into his tyres as possible. Now, he was almost upset. This is a man who was formidable, it must be said, in the first iteration of this, which was a 6-month-long campaign, really, 6-month-long slog almost for a lot of the drivers, but very well attended it remained, with Eresh. All of his counting results, not allowed for his drop scores, of which there were 6, all of his results that counted were race victories, and he followed that up last week with the same result, albeit in unfamiliar circumstances, as he was the hunted as opposed to somebody walking away from the rest of the field. Now, Eresh in the Ford Mustang, not really a Mustang track, it must be said, although the car's power will be very helpful down the front straight. So we're going to try and take you on a lap here, and we're going into turn number 1 at Tarzan Bend. Have to brake as late as possible, somewhere near the pit exit where the exit line starts. You can hook it onto the inside. There is a little bit of banking there, so you can hook it really onto the inside. You just have to wait for the car and progressively build up power. You've got a slight flick left before a right-hander. Awkward, don't hit the curb too hard before, again, hugging the inside at turn number 4 before we exit over the crest. And this is where certain cars, particularly the Honda, Adam Sharp's reported issues on the bumpy part of the back stretch, almost, where you go flat out through some left and right-handed kinks before they're braking down into third gear, most likely, to keep the car hooked to the inside, downhill, so understeer possible, back over a crest, and again, spot your apex, hit the curb nice and hard before then, again, carrying the speed all the way around the curved kink before you get to turn number 10, fire it out again before you get to another long, sweeping, slow corner, it must be said, at turn number 11 before you fire onto the back straight. Short, sharp burst here, which, if you keep your car straight from one side to the other, you don't really have to do a lot to bring the car to the outside, so it makes it even more difficult for turning, going into the final little chicane here before a short blast to the final real corner on the Formula 1 circuit. But you'll see what I mean in terms of the banking, as he aims to hit the apex there. Can't take too much, because if you run wide, you'll lose time all the way down the straight. Perfectly done from Eresh. Now, as he brings the car to the inside, it just keeps it pinned and hopes it sticks there. A little bit of grass there from the German. And where's this going to be? It is going to be pole position for the moment on 1 minute 35.795. That is a good banker. Michael Bruscelli goes across the line, or does he? No, he doesn't, to set his lap time. And then the Aston Martin, I think Gareth Harvey is another man to be out, or to not set a time. In fact, he does go 0.2 of a second slower. Jamie Christie, meanwhile, crosses the line to start his time as Christian Keller goes third for Team Hungary with car number 19. Car number 19 is Serafino Gabino for Team Italy. 2.5 seconds off the pace. That is very much a sight to lap. Here's Luke Prentice, the New Zealand driver. And where is this going to put him? It's going to put him nowhere at the moment. But Gordon Brown crosses the line, another man to be starting a lap time. And here is Andrew Tulloch representing Team Scotland in his chromed purple car. Goes fourth fastest, 0.6 of a second off the back of Eresh. Car 76 now crossing the line. Trevor Mendes goes 1.5 seconds off the pace in fifth position. Car 17 is coming into the pits. That is Darren Mark Davis. So we're going to go to Chris Gebman now. Team Uganda crossing the line. Difficult race for him last time out, but I'm expecting a little bit more. Darren Mark Davis there, 6.5 seconds off the pace. Not a representative lap time. Chris Gebman goes fifth, 1 second off the pace. And that is a good opening gambit there for the Uganda driver. Paul Vidler, meanwhile, crossing the line for seventh at the moment. Team England deposed by his English teammate Adam Sharp, who goes fifth, just ahead of Gebman. And I think there is more movement with Ritu Serra for Team Monaco crossing the line as well to go into the top 10. Eresh now crossing the line once again. 5 minutes gone, 5 to go. Eresh drops the time by 0.4 of a second exactly. We've now got Bruscelli to cross the line. What can he do? The Canadian, ruinously bad luck, doesn't set a time, whereas Gareth Harvey crosses the line. Does take a little bit of time off, doesn't he? But not an awful lot. And here is 1.79. Christian Keller, what's he going to do? Drops it again, takes 0.3 off. Good lap time, it must be said, from the Hungarian, who's shown steady improvement. Jamie Christie for Team Angola crosses the line, 4.6 seconds off the pace. Not a representative lap time. Car number 19, well, is just over. That's Gabino. He's no faster than before. Car 13, that's Jack Barnett, is out and about with Luke Prentice. Where's he gone? Into fifth position. He wants to take a little bit more time off of that because not his fastest time. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, 8th position already, with Andrew Tulloch again up into the top 4, 1 second off. Car 76, who's that crossing the line? It's Trevor Mendes, and he is up into 4th position. So Mozambique continuing their strong form at the start of the season. Chris Gebman now back across the line for Team Uganda. Where's this going to put him? The black, red and yellow Porsche. It puts him 4th, 7/10 of a second faster. Track getting a bit quicker, isn't it? Because times are starting to tumble. Paul Vidler's another man to tumble, but only to 9th position, 1.5 seconds off the pace. And here is Adam Sharp. Adam Sharp up into 2nd, one of the big hitters of the championship. Makes his move now. Ritu Serra, meanwhile, back up into 9th position in the Monaco Honda. With Eresh then back across the line we go. So no rest for the wicked. Eresh across the line. Again, chips away, doesn't he? 2/10 of a second down on that. Brustilli, what's he going to do? Is he going to finally get a time on the board? He is, and it's a good one. 5th position for the Canadian, who has had monstrously bad luck, it must be said, at the start of the season. Here's Gareth Harvey. No higher for the Welsh driver. 179 is Christian Keller. He remains in 4th position, just behind with 141. That's Jamie Christie for Team Angola, up into 9th position. So it's Andrew Tulloch, 1.2 seconds off the pace for Team Scotland, going across the line now. Tries to hook the car to the inside. Really have to make sure that you get that absolutely perfect, because if you turn a metre too late, you're 5 metres wider than you needed to be. Tulloch across the line now. That's a good lap time. 3rd position for the Flying Scotsman. He'll be pleased with that, but more to come. Here's Trevor Mendes across the line. No improvement there for the Mozambique driver. And let's see who is out and about. There's a few who have opted to go for a short, sharp run. Jack Barnett for Team New Zealand, debut in the championship last week. Where's this going to put him? Still 17th, with, I think that is Chris Gebman behind. He remains in 7th, only just under a second off the pace. Paul Vidler is up into 9th position, meanwhile, for Team England in the green. Ferraris, not quite the colours there of Team England, but it does make him nonetheless easier to spot. With Sarah remains 12. Gordon Brown is just starting a lap time. So here is Eresh across the line once again for Team Germany. He comes into the pits, and that is his session over. So he must be pretty pleased with his work as he crosses the line. Now this is Markel and Brustilli across the line. Where's he going to go? 2nd fastest, takes half a second off. Needs to find another half a second, near enough to depose Eresh there. 0.3 of a second behind, with car number 4, Gareth Harvey, in 4th position. He's overtaken Andrew Tulloch, who's dropped to 5th in the blink of an eye. Jamie Christie now across the line. He's 6th for Team Angola. 0.7 of a second off, with Christian Keller and Chris Gebman in the pits. Keller's just left the pits. Will he get enough time to go out again? I don't think he will. That's Christie now across into the first sector now. Andrew Tulloch going across the line. He's got this and another go with just over a minute to go. The purple Aston Martin, where's this going to go? It's 4th. He's shaved another 10th off, so he's getting in the right direction, isn't he? Trevor Mendes, 3rd earlier, wasn't he? He's 9th, 1.1 seconds off the pace, but another chance to go again. And the car 13, that is Jack Barnett for Team New Zealand. And it must be said he made a pretty good debut last week. I know the result didn't back it up, but did everything that you would expect. And he's 15th, so he is off the back row, with Darren Davies still there, and Fernando Ferreira still towards the back. Paul Vidler, meanwhile, goes 10th, whereas this is Adam Sharp, 3rd position at the moment. Where's this going to put him? 2nd place, just over a 10th off the pace. Luke Prentice, meanwhile, goes 8th. He's got another lap to go in order to get where he wants to be. That's not quite where he'd fancy himself, which is Sarah still 12th, with Gordon Brown crossing the line now in 13th. He's got one more go at this, and he's going to need it because he's quicker than that, Gordon Brown. 13th, not where you'd expect the honorary Italian to be. Gareth Harvey in 6th position, just crossing the line now. And he is going to stay 6th for the moment, but I suspect another lap time to come. He's going to last across the line, so we shall see now. Jamie Christie, last to see the flag, or first to see the flag. Where's this going to put him? 7th place it remains for Jamie Christie for Team Angola. Good lap time there, and he can be pleased with that, having missed last week. And the uber competitive field that it is, 17 drivers, bit of a Purcell grid, this small but mighty. Here is Andrew Tulloch across the line for Team Scotland. This looks like a better run, doesn't it? The car looks a bit angrier across the line, doesn't it? Half a second off. He improves, but he stays fourth, so it's a harder fourth place to beat. 0.4 of a second off. He could be pleased with that lap time as well. Car 13 is Jack Barnett. He's now going to be the next across the line. 3 seconds off the pace. If he finds 0.2 of a second, then Gabino is in trouble for 14th. Jack Barnett, meanwhile, crossing the line in the Aston Martin. Where's he going to go here? Jack Barnett, 14th it is. Good lap time there for the debutant in the championship. Paul Vidler, meanwhile, crosses the line, does not improve. And this is car 488, Ritu Serra in the Honda. Luke Prentice hasn't improved, and he will start from the best of 8th position. Ritu Serra has something to say about that. The Spaniard driving for Monaco. Where's this going to go? It's quicker, but no change in position. Gordon Brown, 13th at the moment. Where's this going to put him? And it is 11th place, so he finds 3/4 of a second. Good improvement there to get himself on the fringes of the top 10. It's Gareth Harvey, one of the last across the line in the Aston Martin, driving for Wales. Where's this going to put him across the line? And it puts him 5th. Good lap time there. He's got himself ahead of Paul Vidler, and Andrew Tulloch is safe in the top 4. So there's your grid there. A very fast, fun, action-packed qualifying session. Eresh there to take pole position, so the gamble to come in with 2 minutes to go worked for the German. He was safe just about in first position, and he leads by less than 1/10 of a second from Adam Sharp in the Honda, and Marcelin Brustulli just 2/10 of a second behind Sharp anyway. 3/10 of a second off the pace there for Team Canada. So I'm going to run you through the grid now. So as we mentioned before, Eresh for Team Germany taking pole position. It's an inverse of the front row from last week, with Adam Sharp starting in 2nd place. Marcelin Brustulli for Canada in 3rd position, ahead of Andrew Tulloch, not Andam, Andrew Tulloch driving for Team Scotland. Gareth Harvey is 5th, having risen up in the dying embers of the qualifying session there for Team Wales, ahead of Paul Vidler, the 2nd England car. He will not score points if it was to stay as this for Team England, but he will improve his own personal chances there. You've got Jamie Christie in 7th position for Team Angola. Good lap time there for the Scotsman. They're having missed a chunk of the season, both towards the end and the beginning of this one. Great to have him back in the championship. Luke Prentice, another disappointing qualifying session by his standards. 8th position there for the New Zealand driver. We expected a little bit more from him. He's ahead of Christian Keller in 9th for Team Hungary. The red, green and white McLaren there is striking in its appearance. Chris Getman rounds out the top 10 for Team Uganda, ahead of Gordon Brown, his fellow admin for Team Italy in 11th. Trevor Mendes, 12th position. He was at 1 point in the top 5, wasn't he, for Mozambique? 1.1 seconds off the pace. I expect him to move forwards because he's shown upwardly mobile form in the start of the season so far. Ritu Serra, 13th for Monaco, but only 1.3 seconds off the pace. Then it gets a little bit spaced out with Jack Barnett in the other Aston Martin New Zealand car. He's 14th and would not score points if it was to stay this way. Ditto for Serafino Gabino. He is 15th for Team Italy in the blue and white Porsche. Darren Mark Davies in 16th, car number 17. 7 seconds off the pace for Team Wales. Will also not score points. And Fernando Ferreira not qualifying as he starts in 17th. So 3 minutes to go before a short run to the line. Going to take a couple of minutes to take a break, and we can just explain the rules and the regulations. So there is a pit window. You have to pit, but you do not have to take tyres. There is a fixed refuelling time of 25 seconds. The drivers cannot just take 1 litre and then go at the end, because everyone would do that, and that make things boring. So there's no point doing that with the tyre changes taking 30 seconds. There is a little bit of jeopardy. Do you perhaps save yourself 5 seconds and try and get track position, hold on at the end? Or do you take the tyres and try and see if you can outrace a few that maybe haven't done that? So you've got then the only real strategy call to make, apart from that, is obviously how long or how short you want to fuel. And that a lot of that will determine exactly how your race pans out. You've got Eresh there, the maestro of defending a lead into turn 1 and clearing off. Wasn't quite that way in the last race, was it, with Josh Clayton giving him hell and all problems with Team Germany there, just about hanging on as Mozambique got close, but no cigar Adam Sharp might want a bit of revenge for a lost pole position last week, or sorry, an inability to convert a pole position last week through no fault of the Yorkshireman as he got hit into turn one. Is this a chance of redemption for the Honda, which has been a difficult car to drive for an extended period of time around this particular track? So we'll see whether that manifests itself a little bit later on. And Bruce Tully, someone who has been bemoaning his luck, and with a bit of justification, it must be said, for Team Canada. Can he finally bring it together to get a podium finish? Or will Andrew Tulloch in fourth position, will he be able to spoil as he did previously? The Scotsman known for climbing up the race steadily, and I suspect that will be the case here with Gareth Harvey in fifth and Paul Vidler in sixth. We're just a minute away from the drivers leaving the grid. I will take a quick break before we get underway.
Seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Okay, so the short formation sector is underway as Eresh of Team Germany leads them around, tries to get a bit of heat into his tyres. It's a bit futile, really, trying to do that on a run such as this, where all the drivers are limited to 43 miles an hour as soon as they get on to the straight, with Adam Sharp there giving his rival just a bit of space at this moment in time before he joins up with him at the front. You don't want to be too far ahead on the grid position because you may get a penalty for being too far forwards at the start. No such luck here for Eresh, normally a master of leading the drivers away. Would like the cameras to change just a little bit, as we can't see an awful lot as we wait. We wait for the green lights, and we are go, and that is a good start for Eresh there going into the first corner. Adam Sharp is level going to the outside as Michael Bruce Tully looks to the inside in the Porsche for Team Canada. Not going to work there as Eresh holds on. Adam Sharp retains second place, and actually it might be a battle for third between Bruce Tully and Tulloch. I think Tulloch tucks in there as Gareth Harvey there is also in attendance for fourth position. Paul Vidler is being challenged by his old rival there, Luke Prentice, who's had a good start. He's got past Jamie Christie of Team Angola to get into seventh position as that shakes itself up. Now Prentice and Vidler have had a bit of history previously. Can we keep it clean today, please, lads? Let's have a look and see how that goes on. Chris Gedman is a man up into ninth position. He's got past Christian Keller, with Gordon Brown up into 11th position, staying in 11th position ahead of Trevor Mendez. Richie Serra retains 13th. The Jack Barnett, I think, has lost out to Serafino Gabino for 14th. Pit window is open now. Fernando Ferreira, having been a bit more careful on this first lap compared to previous, he's up into 16th ahead of Darren Mark Davies, who was dropped to the very back. We're going to go and have a look at the lead because Adam Sharp is still only half a second behind Eresh, with Bruce Tully over a second back. So could already be separating into a couple of separate groups here, with Adam Sharp there just half a second behind. Is the Honda going to be able to get past? He needs to do it pretty quickly if he's going to have a chance, because you fancy that once Eresh gets comfortable, he'll be a very difficult man to move out of the way. Eresh there leading across the line for the first time. Let's see as the pack behind already starts to try and break the toe. I think it's a bit optimistic there on behalf of Bruce Tully. I don't think there's going to be any issues there, as Gareth Harvey there 0.2 of a second behind Tulloch going into the first corner, not close enough to make a move, with Vidler and Prentice again in close proximity. So no real change from the first lap after that first corner sorting out there, as Harvey there nearly gets Brian to the back of Tulloch to try and unsettle the Scotsman there. The Scotsman remains unruffled on this particular occasion, as Bruce Tully there leading a group of, well, I think it's all the way back, isn't it, to Darren Mark Davies. Darren Mark Davies there dropping off by a second and a half off the back of the pack, with Adam Sharp there 7/10 of a second off the leader still as they go through the first corner. Bristoli actually does take a 10th out of the Englishman, but it's all academic after the first lap and a half. I think it's going to be more Matterson in the next couple of laps, as Gareth Harvey there is now having a look at his fellow Aston Martin driver with Andrew Tulloch. They're having to hold on once again. Andrew Tulloch there just getting a good exit now, but Vidler, bit of an opportunist sometimes, not always for his own good, but is he going to have a look going into the outside? No, he's not. He's going to hang on there and see if he can line him up. Now the Ferrari driver there has been stable race with another of our drivers, that of our faster drivers, that's Jared Vermeulen, who you can see on Sunday night, which is upcoming this weekend again at 8 o'clock for that one, as Tears do battle. Paul Vidler having a look there. He was only a couple of tenths off. I think it's going to be a bit more, but Vidler now having a serious look at Harvey, with Harvey there 3/10 of a second behind Tulloch, who's holding a bit of a cue at this moment in time. Vidler there going a little bit deep on the brakes, but not deep enough to cause any concern for himself, Harvey, or Prentice behind. Luke Prentice there having a look in the all-black New Zealand Aston Martin. It's a difficult car, isn't it, to miss that one, even if it is a lack of colour rather than his many colours there, as opposed to Vidler. Now in the lead we go. Adam Sharp 7/10 of a second behind Eresh. Eresh not getting away. It was a bit similar to last week, wasn't it, where Eresh really didn't make much of an impression in terms of getting away from Clayton. Clayton was able to stick with him at all points really last week, and Adam Sharp at the moment in the Honda, which I think a short, sharp burst might favour the Honda here compared to normal conditions, because that car capricious on a good day really, and very difficult to keep the tyres. But you don't need to do that really that much, because they're only 20-minute steeps thereabouts, isn't it? So Sharp there in the ascendancy in that regard. Bristoli 2.5 seconds back, but settling in because he's got a good gap to Andrew Tulloch for the moment. 2.5 seconds the gap ahead, but the Canadian needs to keep it safe, steady and secure in amongst the it's a pretty big gaggle of cars, isn't it, behind Tulloch. Tulloch starting to get back at the Canadian now, with Bristoli having to recover from what was a difficult race last time out. He's going to want to keep that gap to be a second, as Gareth Harvey now 3/10 of a second so far behind Andrew Tulloch. Is he going to be close enough to have a look? I don't think he is. And Paul Vidler the same ahead of Luke Prentice. There is a little bit follow the leader at the moment. I suspect this might be strategic race, and if you're a driver at the mid-pack like Prentice or Christie, it must be said, if you're at the back of this rather long queue, we can include Chris Gebman there, who's stuck with this pretty manfully in the first 5 minutes, then it's about self-preservation. You actually might be able to tyre save a little bit if you're Christie or Gebman, with those two not really having a chance to overtake too much because of the fact that everybody is going to be right at the back of the DRS train, effectively, or a slipstream train, as it would be in GT3. And that means that you're going to kind of rely on a bit of luck anyway. So if you can save your tyres, save your brakes, save your temperatures, why wouldn't you? It might come in handy a little bit later on if you decide, as some might, to be honest, given the nature of this circuit, to not take tyres. If you don't take tyres, you might be able to jump up the order. Certainly won't lose out, as Bristoli there 3 seconds back, and he's now less than a second clear of Tulloch. Tulloch working quite hard to get into the slipstream there, and working quite hard to see if he can put Bristoli under a bit of pressure and become the hunter rather than the hunted, with Harvey dropping back just a little bit ahead of the ever keen Paul Vidler going through the final corner now. Doesn't look anything obviously wrong with the Aston Martin or the Ferrari, it must be said. Prentice there following in 3/10 of a second behind as well. Meanwhile, up front, Eresh has got a bit more of a gap. He's now 1.4 seconds clear of Adam Sharp, who has settled into second place. The car's body language looks quite aggressive, doesn't it, for someone in the middle of a train? So I suspect that might be just his line as he goes sort of a bit deeper, can fee the corner. There's a lot of drivers who are U-ing the corner. That means if you fee it, you go a little bit longer on the brakes, turn and have a slightly longer exit, whereas if you U it, it's a slightly shorter run holding the inside. That's what we mean there. That might become relevant at that particular corner later on. I think Chris Gebman has had an off, has he? At the first corner, not really. I did see him run slightly wide, but only 1.9 seconds behind, so he can easily catch that up, with Christian Keller of Team Hungary focusing his attentions rearwards on the Italian-come Scotsman that is Gordon Brown, who covering from a so-so qualifying session. Can he break into the top 10? He's normally very quick in the Lamborghini, but it is a devil of a track to try and pass on. So have a look at the inside of Keller. Keller holds on, doesn't really over-defend too much. A good driver there from the Hungarian, and he can accelerate away with no fuss or bother. It's Mendes and Sarah, two impressive drives, certainly in the case of Mendes last week, with Sarah unfortunate really after being disconnected. It really wasn't his race, but Sarah there 13th, but could easily be looking at a top 10 given how close this is at the moment. With Eresh leading, he's got 2 seconds now on Adam Sharp, so I suspect that's going to be a fairly familiar tale compared to last season for Eresh at this moment in time. He's got 2 seconds ahead, with Bush Tully now having broken the second barrier to Andrew Tulloch in 3rd position, and Gareth Harvey now being the cork in the bottle just about. When I say that, there's a bit of daylight between him and Vidler, as Vidler has the attention of his arch nemesis, Luke Prentice, behind. Prentice having a look around the outside. I don't think that's to try and pass, but it might be to try and unsettle. If you can bob your car about in the most unusual places, it can play on your rival's mind. That's what Prentice is a bit of a master at doing here. He's one of those who will try and play around and buzz around and certainly try and put the opponent off. And in Vidler, he's got a prime target, given their previous coming together last season. So we'll see if that manifests itself, as Vidler now follows. Well, he goes slightly wide through the corner, but it doesn't really matter there. But Prentice is going to have a look. Is he right around the outside, as the Aston Martin perhaps tries to set him up coming out of the final corner? Before he does get a good exit, a good enough one certainly to ward off the challenge of the Aston Martin going into the final stadium section. Think Hockenheim, but on a slightly smaller scale, as Prentice there hooks it round the set 3rd to last corner, really coming up into the short, sharp penultimate corner there. Now, is he going to be able to make a move? He's the closest thing that we've got to a battle. Vidler does run wide coming out of the final corner. That will hamper him all the way down the straight, and Vidler is going to go defensive already in the Ferrari. Now, what's Prentice going to do? Because Vidler's covering the middle of the track, as Prentice there not quite able to make the move. Vidler has it covered in front and doesn't over-defend. So good driving there from Vidler, recovering from a difficult situation. 4th, and they stay 6th and 7th. So we will have to keep an eye on that battle the entire way round, as Gareth Harvey has caught Andrew Tulloch once again. That gap's ebbing and flowing, isn't it, with the 2 Aston Martin drivers, the premier Aston Martin drivers at this moment in time, certainly they're doing battle over 4th place at the moment. Now, these two had eerily similar races last time out in terms of their strategies. They both gambled on dry tyres, which paid dividends for a bit before the rain fell. They both fell by the wayside before they came back a little bit later on. Good drive from the pair of them, it must be said, last time out, 3rd and 4th, respectively for these two, and I suspect that we could be in for a similar result. Both of these in tune with the car, especially Harvey, who's driven the Aston Martin since the Ice Ages, I think it is, and he will be looking to see if he can get in on the act of a podium finish, but he's got to deal with Tulloch first of all, as Bush Tully and Sharp are starting to stretch their legs ahead once again. Bush Tully recovering from a couple of poor, well, not poor laps, but a couple of poor difficult laps to sturdily stretch that lead to 2 seconds once again. The Porsche driver who has results that haven't really shown his pace. I think it's fair to say at the start of this season towards the end of last season, but there is a really good driver in there, and I think it just needs to come together. So we'll see if that comes through for the Canadian. Meanwhile, Harvey having a look at Tulloch, that's not going to work. Luke Prentice having a bigger look around the outside of Paul Vidler, that's also not going to work. Going to need to go a little bit deeper on the brakes to make that one work there. And that might be a bit of a rehearsal for the latter part of the race, with Prentice there ducks in behind Vidler, and they carry on their way, with Jamie Christie meanwhile doing an excellent job in that position. I know he lost out to Prentice at the start, but very easily done around Zandvoort, and he's hung on really to the battle ahead. He's second back. He's got a really good gap over Chris Getman behind, who's dropped back by a couple more seconds since his earlier strife, with Gordon Brown now till 0.2 of a second behind Christian Keller there having to defend in the most awkward of positions. Brown goes around the outside. Is he going to set him up for the braking into turn number 9? I think he is, but not quite. as Keller just about holds on and drops the car, doesn't go too far wide and doesn't over-defend, as Brown having another look up the inside going into turn number 11, and they do fire themselves off the final corner with no further issues there on the corner exit. And actually the Hungarian driver has got a bit of a gap in front of Gritz. He's now at 6/10 of a second. We're going to have a look again as the battle for 4th, 5th, 6th Satinas. It continues now with Hein Tulloch going across the line. I think if he can get the jump, but we're 15 minutes in already, so if he can get any kind of clear space, then he might be on. As well roll the dice as Vidler repels Prentice, and as we can see here, Harvey is repelled by Tulloch. Tulloch, they're driving a fairly comfortable race. It must be said for Team Scotland, with Brustully 3.5 seconds behind Sharp, who's 3 and a bit seconds behind Eresh, who we might as well cut to him at some point, because he's not going to get much time at this moment in time. The German out front and looking set to continue his perfect start to the season. We are only 15 minutes in to a 45-minute race, so anything can happen in FRL, and it usually does. And we won't be counting our chickens just yet, as Darren Mark Davies holds off for 16th place. We've got Jack Barnett in the Aston Martin, who's first time in the season. This is a real learning curve. You could ask Trevor Mendes here, who's currently 11th Team Mozambique. Mendes had a pretty difficult start to last season, but he grew and he grew and he grew, and he's now turned into, he was the favourite for the AM Championship previously in Sunday Series, and I suspect, given he's in the second tier for this season, he should be doing quite well on Taco Tuesdays. We'll take you through those races actually whilst there was a bit of lull in the proceedings. So we'll start with the Patreon, because FRL, Formula Racing League, has a Patreon server, which basically means for the cost of about £4 a month, Luke Prentice does come into the pits for a cost of about £4 a month, which is, well, it's half a Big Mac, isn't it? Just about. And it's a bit healthier than a Big Mac. Or it's, just around about the cost of a coffee. You can actually pay to go towards running of the league. You can pay to get your own number. You can ask Chris Gedman to do all sorts of funny call signs and costumes for yourself, or profile pictures for yourself, and you can get him to do anything you want. He can be a bit of a court jester if you so wish, but you get all of those for £4 a month, £48 a year. It's not a lot really, is it? So if you want to join, ask any questions in the comments, and then admin will respond to you with how you can get involved. We race on Tuesday nights on Taco Tuesday, and we race on Sunday nights all in the evening from 8:30 on Tuesday, and for the Sunday Sprint Series, a reverse grid special in race number 2 from 8 o'clock on Sunday nights, where you can get to hear me once again if you want to watch. We're looking at the racing now, and Luke Prentice there coming out well ahead. Is he? No, he's come out behind Jamie Christie. So Jamie Christie for Team Angola has got past Luke Prentice. Now, has Christie taken tyres? I don't know. We'll certainly find out as the race goes on, but the McLaren not looking particularly happy as he leaves the track. As he goes, Prentice there just behind, a couple of seconds back at the moment, I would estimate, and he's got a bit of work to do, because even if he's on foot later on, the advantage when it hits home. So we've got now Harvey 0.2 of a second behind. No, and Paul Vidler is pitted as well. So Team England are trying to cover off. In the case of Christie, we're trying to cover off Team Angola, who've got past Luke Prentice, and they're trying to cover off New Zealand, who are currently 17th at the moment as it shakes out. Gareth Harvey, meanwhile, all over the back of through Tulloch. Tulloch not once, and he is retaining 4th position and starting to catch the Porsche of Marklin Brustully. Brustully there, having been 3.5 seconds clear, is now 3.1 seconds. So don't know whether there's been any strife or any difficulties there for the Canadian, but he may have to re-engage if this carries on. Vidler dropping down the order as all the rest of the drivers come through. We're going to see now whether the Ferrari, is he going to set off? So he's setting off now, but he's got quite a bit of pit lane to go. Luke Prentice, meanwhile, has got past, unseen by us, Jamie Christie. So Christie there was in a bit of difficulty in the McLaren, wasn't he? But they haven't got past Paul Vidler. So Vidler holds on ahead of Luke Prentice, and so it's as you were for that particular battle. We'll need to see where Harvey and Tulloch shake out. One of them might have to blink soon, but Christie there, having done the hard part and getting past Luke Prentice, is running away there. The Scotsman driving the Team Angola, what was a previously fault-free race so far, but still plenty of time to make up for that if we just tick towards halfway. Gareth Harvey, meanwhile, the latest to come into the pits, and we'll see now. I think Tulloch might just have to carry on going for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and maybe make a tyre advantage last. Harvey now into the pits. Let's see where he comes out as Chris Gebman has a bit of a battle behind as Gordon Brown has got a pass unseen by us, Christian Keller. The Scotsman will be devastated that that's not been seen. He loves watching these back and he loves catching a bit of the action, especially if it involves himself. But Gordon Brown now behind the, probably the driver with whom he is most familiar, Chris Gebman there in the port. Not making it easy for his admin stablemate. And Brown now in the Lamborghini, looking large in the mirrors of the Porsche there for Team Uganda. Slight change in paint scheme. Will it bring a change in luck for Chris Gebman now as they battle at the moment for 5th place? We'll keep an eye on Gareth Harvey as he leaves the pits any minute now. With Vidler now coming across the line, he's got 2 seconds on Luke Prentice. I wonder if there was a bit of tyre tactics in there before. I wonder if that might be why the gaps. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, going around the outside, going into the next corner. Gareth Harvey has had a nightmare of a stop. So he is back out behind not only Paul Vidler, but he's dropped behind Luke Prentice as well. So is this tyre tactics involved? Because Jamie Christie, even with an error-strewn outlap, has also gotten right onto the back of the Team Wales driver. Disaster as it is for the moment for Gareth Harvey, and he's going to have to work very, very, very hard to get past Vidler and Luke Prentice ahead. So this will be music to the ears of Andrew Tulloch, because Tulloch and Prentice, as Tulloch does pit now, Tulloch and Prentice are in the same party, so all of this will be fed back. So the Scotsman pits with a 10-second gap over Chris Gebman. Chris Gebman, meanwhile, fighting with Gordon Brown. Brown looking particularly good off of the exit of the final corner. Is he going to have a move on the inside? No, as Gebman has that covered. The Porsche driver, most experienced driver on the grid, and an FRL stalwart, as well as a graphic design extraordinaire. Holds on for the first sector. Brown, though, not going to take this line down. Trevor Mendes, meanwhile, is all over the back, or he was anyway, all over the back of Christian Keller. It's now Fernando Ferreira paying for not qualifying earlier. He's stuck behind the 2 McLarens ahead. So, excellent race developing here in the lower midfield. Once this all shakes out, Serafino Gabino, meanwhile, just behind, as Ritu Serra has had a bit of issues, isn't he? Because where he was, well, he's showing us 11th at the moment, but that will be 10th. But he is quite far back from Gabino, and that's most unlike the Spaniard, who had a pretty impressive start to the race. Bit similar, actually, to what happened last week. So, Andrew Tulloch is side by side there with Paul Vidler. Tulloch there haven't had not the best of stops either, and Vidler appears to have jumped both Harvey and Tulloch. He has. The Ferrari gets a drop on the Scotsman in the Aston Martin, and so it's all changed around. Musical chairs from what was 4th position all the way down to 8th, with these 5 now, with Vidler, Tulloch, Prentice, Harvey and Christie, have been all swapped around to a degree. Tulloch, meanwhile, will have at least a tyre advantage if he's taken tyres on Vidler, with Vidler having been the first to blink a little bit earlier on, but that might not do it for the Scotsman, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there. The one thing the Aston does have is a bit of grunt down the straight, but the Ferrari is a good all-round car. Sharp, meanwhile, 3.5 seconds, 3.8 seconds back, with Brustulli now looking perhaps a little bit safer than he was in 3rd position. He's got 14 seconds on Chris Gebman, with Gordon Brown all over the back of the honorary Ugandan Chris Gebman there, having represented Estonia in the last championship. He won't be representing them, representing the proud African nation, and he's representing them well. Chris Gebman ahead of Brown, with Keller dropping back by a second, also having defended manfully from the main man Gordon Brown earlier on. We've got Trevor Mendes having pitted before, and that is Jack Barnett in the pits behind Darren Mark Davis, who has continued on his merry way. But here is a battle, I think, between Prentice and Tulloch. Prentice and Tulloch there, very close proximity, but the Aston Martin there, as I said, these 2 stablemates before, giving each other racing room. Now, these 2 have raced hard and fair throughout the years, so don't expect to see any issues here. Famous last words, though that was as Trevor Mendes leaves the pits as well to rejoin the race. Not that far, it must be said, behind Jamie Christie, who's showing us 17th, but that's because he's pitted early. That's not where he will stay. With Jack Barnett now coming out of the pits as we speak. So Barnett leaves the pits as well. Just needs to make sure that he gets ahead of the driver ahead, which was Darren Mark Davies ahead there. Trying to remember who that was of Team Wales. That's the back of the grid battle for pride and beer money in the case of Barnett, with New Zealand leading the way. Adam Sharp is pitted, and that leaves Bruce Tully and Eirish as the two leading lights out front. Eirish there, 9 seconds now clear of Bruce Tully as we tick over into the second half of the race. 21 minutes to go in the pit window, so you can't fail to hit it, with Gebman still in fourth position at this moment in time. Gabino was coming to the pits, and that's Eirish off into the weeds, and he's gone rally crossing the German. Well, I said that would be an easy win walking away, and the German has proven that is not going to be the case. And is that going to cost him time? Well, it's going to cost him time. Is it going to cost him a position? Because that's easily a couple of seconds lost. He needs to have now the pit stop of his life in order to guarantee first position. We don't know where Sharp is at the moment, but he has left the pits now, and he is well clear of the previous pit drivers. That's Paul Fiddler. You would expect him in a team riding if they catch up to each other, with Fiddler and Fiddler and Sharp in Team England. But now Eirish has to carry on, I would suspect, because if he pits now, then he could sentence himself to a battle behind the Honda now. The Ford Mustang, is he going to pit? He is going to pit, so we shall stick with this as and when Adam Sharp comes across the line. Bruce Tully, meanwhile, it cost him 3.5 seconds, so I reckon that Sharp has a real chance here of taking the lead. If his pit stop was any good, we won't find out for another minute or so, with Chris Gebman now leading the way across the line. Where's he going to go? He's going to stay out ahead of Gordon Brown. I suspect that those two might be going slightly longer for tyre reasons, as Keller and Ferreira both pit, and Ritu Serra now is just coming around, isn't he, to complete his lap times. We'll see exactly what happens there, but Keller and Ferreira in the pits as well. And now we're going to cut to Adam Sharp. Sharp, meanwhile, is going to finish his lap. Where is Eirish going to be? Because Eirish went off on his outlap and on his in-lap, and now he faces a fight to keep hold of this. Sharp now coming across the line, and we're going to go to Eirish. Is he leaving the pits? No. Yes, he is. So I think he's just about going to hold on, but it's a lot closer than it was. And here comes Adam Sharp now to see if he can put pressure on the German. We've seen that for once Eirish can crack, but he's got Michael and Bruce Tully, who's inserted himself in all of this, into second place. Now, I don't think Bruce Tully has taken tyres, because he's gained 5 seconds on Eirish, so I suspect Eirish might want to take him tyres, but Bruce Tully in the Porsche has gambled, and why wouldn't you? Because he had nothing to lose from behind, and this could be a bit of a play to save Eirish, but also it could be a bit of a land grab from Michael and Bruce Tully. Bruce Tully of Team Canada, who's had some poor luck so far. Could this be the change in fortunes that he's been craving? Now we're going to try and see, and that's Tulloch still behind Paul Fiddler. So at the moment, as it is right now, Eirish is the net leader ahead of Bruce Tully and Sharp to make up the podium, but Paul Fiddler has climbed up to 4 for Team England. So whilst that won't do him any favours in terms of a team perspective, it will limit the scoring potential of both Tulloch, Prentice and Harvey behind. So Tulloch and Prentice together, as they have been since their pit stops were completed, with the New Zealand driver still again paying for not the best of qualifying sessions. He's normally a bit better than that in 8th position, but the New Zealand driver is certainly making up for that on race day, with Gareth Harvey just behind the 2.5 seconds back. I wonder what's happened there, because his car looks very, very dirty. Doesn't look like he's been put by in the sand, so I wonder if he's had tricky issues around the lap. As Darren Mark Davies and Chris Gebman both pit, and Gordon Brown and Richie Serra carry on their merry way. So we're nearly through the pit stop phase. We've got a couple to focus on now, as Brown and Serra continue on without stopping just for the moment. Eirish, meanwhile, is in the lead now, as it is at the moment in terms of a net position, with Chris Gebman, despite what it says there, he's not third. He'll be, I would suspect, with car 76, about 12th, so he's behind Jamie Christie, but he has got to escape the attentions of a fired up, warmed up Trevor Mendes. Trevor Mendes hasn't gained much except for position, I think, on Christian Keller. Christian Keller has dropped back, but I think Fernando Ferreira, what's happened there? Because he's gone miles back, unless he's been in the wars once again, and it's been an unfortunate start to the season if that's the case for Ferreira, with last week obviously him having a lot more pace, but having a couple of whoopsie-daisy moments, let's say that. Gabino, meanwhile, in 15th with Sarah to pit. I think Sarah comes out just ahead at the moment, if memory serves, and Gordon Brown, who won't be a factor in their race. So, Brown, leading for the moment, is he going to do one of those things, or one of those special strategies that he usually does, whereby he goes a bit longer and will just take fuel to go to the end? I suspect that's the case, and why would you break up your rhythm as it is right now? The Flying Scotsman is making his way through the first sector. He's still got a decent gap on Sarah, so certainly going to perhaps get himself into the top 10. And as this shakes out now, I think Erish is just, he's going to keep first place. I think what's happened with Brustilli not taking tyres, he's holding up Sharp at the moment. Sharp, who had very briefly a shot at the victory, but Brustilli, by not taking tyres, has closed the gap to Erish. But I think he's just going to cause a problem for Adam Sharp, which is entirely his right, the Canadian. If he can hang on to second place from here, it's a masterstroke, quite frankly. But they are going to hold up, when Fiddler gets there, going to be England 3 and 4. Now, sometimes last season, Team England had a bit of a problem with inter-team collisions, so that may be a factor a little bit later on. We'll hope that that is not the case. Andrew Tulloch, meanwhile, appears to have broken the attentions of Luke Prentice. Luke Prentice now dropping a second back in the second Aston Martin with Gareth Harvey. It's a bit 0 to 0 in terms of last race, wasn't it? Because last race's strategy was perfect. This race, for whatever reason, it has not gone that way. So he runs very slightly wide on the grass going out, but no issues there because he'll get back up. Jamie Christie, meanwhile, having done such an excellent job before, I think it's ran out of grip certainly somewhere around the race because second stint, not gone as he would have hoped. He's in 10th place as we go to the lead now, or go to near the lead, certainly. Battle for silver medal as it stands in the race so far. So, Sharp, all over the back of Brustilli. The Honda has got decent acceleration, the Porsche's got great traction, and the Porsche goes defensive. So, the Honda, is he going to be able to make a move down the inside? I don't think he's going to get close enough because the Porsche doesn't have great top end, but you don't really need it around Zandvoort because the longest straight that you're going to get is that one, and you're not going to get close to breaking top speed. So Brustilli holds on for the moment with Sharp in 5th position and net 3rd for Team England on his way to hopefully repairing the damage from last week. So Erish, meanwhile, has the fastest lap. That will come with its own points, as Luke Prentice found out last week with the individual drivers' championship certainly being level between those two, courtesy of Luke Prentice's fastest lap. With Erish now in 3rd position, I suspect, with clearer that he's got and the overriding pace advantage that the Ford Mustang, the blue oval, should be ahead. But what's this? That Brustilli, did he run slightly wide going through there? I don't think that was the cleanest of exits there for Markel and Brustilli. Brustilli running slightly wide, kicking up some grass, feeling the pressure, it must be said, from Adam Sharp, with Fiddler now catching at a rate of about half a second. That Gordon Brown pits, meanwhile, to try and leapfrog his way up the order. I think he might be in the top 10 after this, with Richie Serra a little bit further back. Now, Adam Sharp, is he going to be able to set one up out of the final corner? He needs to really prioritise the exit here because the Porsche is going to struggle as the race goes on. The Porsche does go slightly wide, but so does Adam Sharp, and Sharp now is going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat here as the Porsche thinks about going defensive. He doesn't in the end, and Sharp stays in the slipstream now with Paul Vidler. Well, he's not that far back, is he? They're 3/10 behind there, and Paul Vidler now 5.5 seconds back. Yes, so it is still half a second a lap there or thereabouts. Luke Prentice, meanwhile, where's Andrew Tulloch gone? Tulloch has gone off somewhere. The Scotsman, having hit problems a little bit earlier on in his pit stop, has now hit problems again out on the circuit because Luke Prentice has gained a place, so has Gareth Harvey. So that's the week commences between those two, whereas Tulloch, who was 4th and net 4th earlier on in the race, struggling it now seems. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, leaves the pits and he has got past Chris Geppan, so that's worked out a net gain for the Italy driver as he rejoins in, I would suspect, about 7th position. I think because Jamie Christie, no, it's not 7th, it's 8th, as it works out because of the unique way that ACC does things. I think it's going to be is it 8th? No, it's 9th. It's 9th, ahead of Richie Serra, who has dropped to, I believe, 11th place, is he? No, 13th place, as Chris Gedman makes the top 10. I promise I'll get a handle on this one day. Right, Erish now in the lead. 6.5 seconds clear of Bristolli, with Bristolli reversing along with Adam Sharp, it must be said, down the order. Another 7/10 for Vidler so far on this particular lap, and it's going to be a bit worrisome for Team England given they had intra-team battle problems last time out. And Sharp now half a second behind. He's got to really prioritise the exit coming out the final corner as Bristolli does take to the grass. That might just affect the Porsche's progress down the straight. I don't think it's going to affect it enough as he covers the inside. Sharp goes around the outside. He might have to start playing around a little bit with Bristolli because at the moment it's a bit easy for the Porsche driver. It will get harder and harder, and we could then see a bit of a battle royale. Vidler's dropped a couple of tenths in the final sector. Gareth Harvey, meanwhile, all over Luke Prentice. Luke Prentice there struggling a bit with the pace at this moment in time. And the Team Wales driver, now these two also have a little bit of history. Obviously, it's not just Luke. But these two also have a bit of a history as they fight for 5th position. Harvey now all over the back of his fellow Aston Martin driver. So we'll see a battle royale for 2nd and a battle for 5th position as they go through. Harvey only 4/10 of a second back, but it's less than 3 for Adam Sharp. We've got 11 minutes to go. I would suspect that equates to about 7-8 laps, I would have thought. Probably about 8 laps to go still. So plenty of racing to be done, plenty of overtaking opportunities to arise, as I think we can see now. Where's that at the back? I think it's, yeah, so Barnett and Davies have dropped. Their battle from earlier has grown apart as well, so no battle there for 16. So it is going to be these two that we focus on. Harvey's dropped back from Prentice. Sharp hasn't really dropped back from Bristolli, has he? So, second to last corner. A little bit more aggressive over the curves, the Honda. And does that pay dividends? Well, the Porsche looks slightly understeery there, but he just about brings it through. The Porsche's superior traction going to be a real weapon for the moment. Runs slightly wide on corner exit, covers the inside, Bristolli. And is Sharp going to be able to make a move? 0.2 of a second back, not yet able to make a move. Might have to, again, play around a little bit behind, but it's difficult with the Honda as capricious as it has been. Sharp reporting that the car difficult to drive on long runs, especially down the back end of the circuit. So we'll see how that plans out. But Bristolli 8.5 seconds back and dropping rapidly off the back of Eresh. But it doesn't matter, because if he's gained a position, then it's going to be a masterstroke in terms of strategy. Gareth Harvey dropping back another few tenths of a second behind off the back of Luke Prentice. So that battle cools down just for the moment. Chris Gedman, meanwhile, 4/10 of a second behind Gordon Brown. Brown having not really motored since his pit stop, but I don't think he took tyres, and they're both going to be vulnerable to Trevor Mendes of Mozambique. A decent result last time out for Mendes. He's going to be looking for better here today. 11th place used to be a great result for him, but now, because of his rise in the rankings since he came to us at the earlier part of the year, might actually not be seen as good enough for Trevor Mendes. Mendes 2 seconds back, having had a slightly poor first sector, but is he going to be able to make a challenge for the top 10? Meanwhile, speaking of challenges, it's Adam Sharp again, all over the back of Bristolli. Bristolli looking a little bit ragged coming out of the final chicane stroke hairpin. Is that going to present an opportunity through the final sector? Because if he's a little bit ragged there, he might be ragged on corner entry into the final corner. It hasn't manifested itself so far, but Bristolli now keeping to the outside, trying to keep as wide as possible, and the Honda not going to be able to make a move here. So Bristolli holds on for another day. He's losing a second a lap thereabouts, the leader ahead, but it doesn't matter, as I keep saying. Harvey, meanwhile, 0.3 of a second back, having caught up to the back of Luke Prentice once again. And once again, the New Zealand driver ahead holds on. So these two doing really well to keep out of each other's way in terms of contact. And we hope that that continues the remaining 8 minutes, because these two putting on a real spectacle, along with the two in second and third. Sharp, 0.4 of a second behind, and is looking to try and see if he can force a mistake, because it's a really difficult track to make a legitimate, genuine move. Then it's all about how do you try and put the other driver off? How do you try and make it difficult for him? And, well, he's going to have to play about a little bit. Honda will have superior grip just for the moment, but it is a difficult car to drive the longer you drive on it. With the Porsche still having a traction advantage, you can see there. Look at that. It must be so disheartening if you're chasing the Porsche, and he's still able to produce that with tyres so much older. But Brusciulli doing an excellent job so far as Sharp there. Well, chances of a win almost gone. I think when Erish went off for a bit, I think he gave us a little bit of a tease, didn't he, really? But at the moment, Erish will cut to him just for the moment, crossing the line, and he's 10 seconds clear. And that's enough of Erish because there's nothing there at the moment in terms of any action. We're going to go back to Adam Sharp in third position. What's he going to do here? Because he goes to the inside, not going to work because the Team Canada Porsche still has a traction advantage down the straight. Luke Prentice, meanwhile, holding off Gareth Harvey. Harvey behind, doing a really good job to put the New Zealand driver under pressure. Is it going to work? Because it must be said, Luke doesn't crack very often under pressure, so it's going to have to be a really good move on Harvey's part. Harvey's capable of it. We've seen it before so many times. Is he going to be able to pull another rabbit out of the hat? We shall see a little bit later on as we go back to the battle for second place, and that is Adam Sharp. Adam Sharp there, still looking for a way past Brusciulli as we go into the follow the leader section now. Is he going to be able to force the Porsche into a mistake? We saw as the Porsche does break a little bit early going through the back half of the circuit. This might actually be somewhere the Honda can profit from, but the Honda does go slightly wide, has a little bit of understeer in the Porsche. Takes that corner rather well, doesn't he? Because it's got a bit of traction advantage there, and the traction will again make itself a back. Look at that. He's just driven away. So what was 2/10, less than 2/10 there is now the 7/10 of a second, isn't it? So Honda going to have a mighty final sector in order to get on terms. He does miss the apex there just a bit, but hooks it in nicely. Try and see if he can get into the vortex of danger, so to speak, from the Formula Racing Pete Stewart. So Sharp following his way around the final corner. Not really going to be close enough to make a move there, I don't think. So we're going to go back to Gareth Harvey. Harvey, again, in a position where he's probably not going to be able to make a move on Prentice. Prentice just about hanging on for the moment as Sharp there, 4/10 of a second behind. Having a look, not quite, as we go into turn number 1 at Tarzan Bend. Here's Harvey, meanwhile, having a look. Not quite there. No danger there for either driver. All of these drivers driving a really sensible race, it must be said, because normally, you can expect a little bit of contact, but nothing really between either drivers for second and third or fifth and sixth. And it is a credit to both chasing drivers especially that hasn't yet happened. Sharp, meanwhile, 2/10 of a second behind, closer than he's ever been, but in the follow the leader section. So he's going to try and put the Porsche under pressure. The Porsche now started to get more and more ragged, and here is Sharp now a little bit better over the curves. You'd expect that given the state of the two cars' tyres, but then the Porsche is able to just simply drive away in this section here. He's going to have to try and see if he can limit that traction ability of the Porsche going through those two corners in particular. If he can sort of interrupt his line just a little bit, Sharp, then he might be able to get past Brusciulli. But Brusciulli, it must be said, doing a masterful job there. Oh, as soon as I say that, there is a little bit of contact there, but Sharp does not gain the place. Make sure that he doesn't gain the place, and Brusciulli is able to fight another day. And that might actually play into Brusciulli's hands. There's a flash of apology there from Adam Sharp to say sorry there. I'm sure that that's no aggression on the Yorkshireman's behalf, as Sharp there lets them go, and Brusciulli actually has a little bit of time over the two. I think he's weaving behind again to show more apology. And look, as I said before, Paul Vidler has caught the back of these. He's 1.2 seconds behind, and as I said, with the friendly fire situation that so often befell England last season, you think back to Zolder when Sharp had a win taken away due to an issue with Vidler further back, then it could be dicey for Team England. Now, Adam Sharp has got to focus both frontwards and possibly rearwards as Vidler now sets his sights on a possible overall podium. Brusciulli hanging on masterfully, it must be said. 16 seconds back, we've got Gareth Harvey still fighting, or trying to fight his way past the immovable object that is the New Zealand Aston Martin with Andrew Tulloch. 2.5 seconds back and still in with a fighting chance of getting past. Harvey, meanwhile, trying to launch a move through the middle part of the second. You can do it if you're clever enough on the brakes. Prentice there doing his brake dapping to try and ward. It's almost like a sort of warding dance from an animal, you might think there, the way that the brakes flash on the Aston Martin as he stabs his way through. It's Adam Sharp again, trying to go side by side with Brustulli. Brustulli still holding the pair up, and Vidler having dropped back just a bit. So Brustulli, vulnerable as he is, probably got 2 more laps of this to fight with as they come round the next time by, because Erish has just crossed the line. So it'll be 2 after this. Froome, battle on the back, or getting onto the back, sorry, of the Porsche, and Brustulli does go wide, and so does Sharp. Sharp is going to have to try and see if he can get past around the outside. We've got another battle in the background as well, as Sharp goes to the outside, not going to go through there, but Gareth Harvey has got the inside on Luke Prentice. Now he's going to slide it up the inside. There's contact, is there? No, not quite. Prentice just about hangs it around the outside. Great racing between the two, as Harvey did really well not to collect the New Zealand driver, but I think that might be a warning for Luke Prentice as they go through into the final couple of laps. Now Harvey does run slightly wide onto the marbles there, but he can collect that up and have another go. Adam Sharp, meanwhile, is stuck behind, affectionately known as Froome to a lot of drivers, it must be said. So if you did catch that, you'll forgive me, I'm sure. Adam Sharp 4/10 of a second behind, but Brustulli doing really well to hold off. He's going defensive now, going into what was a Porsche stronghold. So if he can get the traction right here, rear's going just a little bit, but Sharp frightened away by that, it seems a little bit. Sometimes a little bit the Jensen Button trick kick at the back end out to try and warn your driver not to go anywhere near. I'm sure that wasn't quite the case, but it works nonetheless, as we're going to go on to the final lap next time around. Eresh is going to cross the line to start that. We'll get back to him when he does come across the line, but it's Brustulli versus Sharp we're going to look for, as well as Harvey versus Prentice. Harvey has got past Luke Prentice somewhere on the lap. Luke Prentice has given up 5th position, and he's now got a fight to keep 6th with Andrew Tulloch behind as well. So all change for 6th place and 5th place. Is it going to be all change for the second step on the podium? Brustulli goes to the inside to try and break the toe. Adam Sharp goes around the outside. Is he going to be able to make it last? They're side by side. Brustulli takes him all the way wide as he possibly can. Is there going to be a traction advantage there for the Honda? No, not quite, because he's going to go onto the gravel just a bit, so that's going to keep him behind going into the next section. The next part really is going to be the end of the second sector, you would have thought. You're going to stay with this because Tulloch is also going to try and see if he can catch Prentice out for 6th place. It's been a bad end to the race for Prentice. Is it going to get worse? We'll go back to that, because Sharp following now on the back stretch so far. Not quite a straight, but it's an acceleration zone as they go through the 3rd gear downhill right-hander to end the 1st sector. Now, is he going to be able to line him up here? The Porsche had gone defensive going into this next braking zone. The Porsche goes defensive again, but the Honda not able to get past on this occasion. Here's where the Porsche has been strong, because Brustulli has had monstrous traction coming out of turn number 11, and off we go again. I don't think the Honda's going to get there going into the final chicane, so it's going to be a bit of a blast to the end. Eresh, meanwhile, coming across the line to complete what has been a much easier assignment compared to last week. It's Eresh for 2 wins out of 2 for Team Germany as they take the lead overall in the standings, and that is an excellent drive there from Eresh. But we're going to go back to the battle for second, and Brustulli is going to finally make good on the promise that he's shown. The Canadian is going to hold off Adam Sharp for 2nd place, and that is an excellent race between all 3 drivers at the end. Adam Sharp is 3rd ahead of Paul Vidler for Team England, who didn't get involved. Gareth Harvey is going to take 5th place ahead of Luke Prentice for Team New Zealand in 6th. Andrew Tulloch takes 7th, couldn't quite get past his stablemate Luke Prentice in 6th. Gordon Brown rescues 8th place ahead of Jamie Christie. Jamie Christie dropping back in the latter stages ahead of Chris Gedman for Uganda. Trevor Mendez in 11th place for Team Mozambique to continue their strong start. Christian Keller is going to hold on to 12th. A good result for Team Hungary ahead of Fernando Ferreira, who has paid really in 13th for the lack of qualifying. Serafino Gabino completes the top 14 for Team Italy, will not be scoring points. Ahead of Ritu Serra, who's had a difficult day for Team Monaco here, so he's going to finish in 15th, with Jack Barnett having already crossed the line. We're just going to wait then for Darren Mark Davis, the Team Wales representative and the commentary OG, to cross the line. Here is Darren Mark Davis coming out of the final corner to finish 16th and avoid the wooden spoon for Team Wales. A good drive from the Welshman, and he can be rightly pleased to finish off the bottom. But it's a win for Eresh and Team Germany, and a second place there. Manful fight from Brush Tully and an excellent drive, it must be said, to firstly make the strategy call to keep Sharp out in second place. Adam Sharp, who was second early on, drops to third and will settle for the final step on the podium. So return to form for the Englishman ahead of Paul Vidler, who will strengthen his individual championship performance, but keeps out of it for Team England. It's a good performance all round for Team England. Wales will score points for P5, with Gareth Harvey recovering past Luke Prentice following a poor pit stop. Luke Prentice hold on for sixth place ahead of Andrew Tulloch, with Gordon Brown completing the top 8. Driver of the day, for me, would go to Marklin Brush Tully after the trials and tribulations of the last couple of races in Formula Racing League, not least last week. The strategy call to go from third to second via the no tyres check was a really good call, so I'm going to give it to Marklin Brush Tully, the driver of the day. That's all from me now, as it's getting late. There'll be no post-race interviews, but join us again next week at the same time of roughly 10:30 for qualifying for next week's racing in Formula Racing League, the Late Night World Tour. Where are we, actually? I think we're at where are we? It's not Turbat, it's Imola that we're at for the next race. But join us again on Sunday, where you've got me and the returning league commentator, Greg Wood, to take you through the reverse grid and the 20-minute sprint on Sunday at 8 o'clock. Be there or be square. Take care. Bye-bye.